raise the loader so we can get a better look. Yeah, that should be the hole right there. Oh, took my meter leads off to raise the loader. Now, looks like my junkyard alternator crapped out. Getting no change. That's a bummer. Well, I'm going to pull this alternator and have it retested down at the auto parts store. Just to see whether or not it still passes the test down there. Meanwhile, I'm just noticing there's a lot of smoke coming out of the bottom of the engine here, and it's coming out of the breather over here, so it's probably a lot of blow-by. But the other thing that I noticed was it looked like there was smoke coming over here, and I thought maybe it was just being blown up, pulled up by the fan, but now with the engine off, I was just noticing that there's little wisps of smoke coming out right over here. And I don't know if you recall, but the original alternator was soaked with diesel fuel or oil. And this whole side of the engine here, obviously it looks like there's a leak. And it looks like it's a pretty darn good leak coming out of the valve cover. So that's something I'm going to want to address, obviously, at some point. I'd like to run a compression test on this engine, and I was reading about how to do it, and there's basically two methods. One is to remove what's called the energy cell, which is under this plug, and the other way is to remove the injector. And it's less work to remove the energy cells than it is the injectors, and the only reason you would do one or the other, it really depends on what size adapter you have. Now, I don't have an adapter to fit either one of these, but I'm hoping I'm going to have something close enough that I can use on this side and adapt my compression tester to use on this this port. So without further ado, let's try and pull an energy cell. Alright, 1-inch socket fits that outer cap. Now behind that cap there's a spacer, which I'm going to get my magnet to grab that. Okay, so this is what the spacer looks like. You can grab that with a magnet. That's in there pretty loose. Then we've got this little part right here. I forget what this is called. But this you just grab with needle nose pliers, and that comes right out. Voila. Now the trick is getting the actual energy cell out, which is a little tricky. What you have to do is there are actually threads down inside there. So what you do is you actually end up threading a bolt. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can thread a long bolt into there with a washer on it, so that as you tighten it, the washer pushes up against the outside of the block, and the tightening of the bolt will actually pull the energy cell out. Another way is if you've got the right size bolt that you can thread into there, you can put a puller on it, like a slide puller, and pull it out that way. There is actually a controversial way to get these out, which is you remove the injector from the opposite side for that cylinder, and you insert a drift through the opening and bang it out this way. Now, these things are actually notoriously durable during use. Typically, they just need to be cleaned up from carbon, and so it's not typical, I guess, for these things to be broken. But a good way to break one or damage one is to stick a hard steel drift in there and tap it out. So it's actually not recommended that you do that method. There's really no reason to do it that way if a pull is going to work or a bolt's going to work by pulling it out this side. Interesting to note, though, in the one of the service manuals that I was reading, it actually does say that that is a method that can be used to remove it. And the way they describe it, though, is they say a soft brass drift. And I think that's the key there. You know, you're taking a brass rod and you're banging it against the steel in there. It's probably going to be okay. But I'm not going to do that just because I don't want to go through the trouble of taking the injectors out at this time. So I am going to find me a bolt that's going to thread into there. I just shined the light in there, and I'll tell you, I don't see any threads. I only see a very small hole, which I can't imagine that's the hole they're talking about that's threaded. Huh. I have to recheck my manual on this. When in doubt, follow the instructions. Well, there are threads in there. They're fine threads. And the size bolt is a 15/16-20 NF. So fine thread. 15/16 inch, 20 pitch. I don't have one of those. And I can't go to the store and get one because it's New Year's Day. What a bummer. Well, here's some containers of hardware left over from the 353, well, from the multi-hole backhoe scrapping project, which I didn't get around to finishing, but the point is, I looked in there and lo and behold, I didn't find this bolt. Of course, it was as rusted as that in there because I had left this stuff outside and water had gotten in it, but just cleaned it up on the wire wheel. Let's go try it. It's fine thread, and it looks like it might be the right size. Could I be that lucky? I think it's either too big or too short. Might be the head of the bolts bottoming out before I get a chance to actually get the thread in there. So if this is the right size, then it needs to be longer than this. Well, nothing's cooperating today. First, couldn't get that energy cell out because I don't have the right size bolt. Well, actually, first I can't get my alternator working. But the next thing I was going to try was I was thinking, well, I wonder if I could just leave the energy cell in there and do a compression test. You know, not sure if the compression would blow that energy cell out of the hole, but so my plan there was to find a fitting that would thread into this hole and then adapt it down. But the problem is I've got this style of compression tester, which is good for small engines. I've used it on tractors too. You just hold it in there, but on a diesel engine, because the compression is so much higher, it's going to be too hard to hold this in there and get a good reading. So I could unscrew this fitting right here and just use the gauge. The problem is the little check valve thing is in the end here, so that's going to be too hard for me to get an accurate reading with that check valve out of the circuit. So I think I'm going to invest in a compression testing kit, the style that has the hose and comes with a few different fittings. But I know that none of those fittings are going to get close. They're going to be all spark plug sized threads. None of them, and they're going to probably all be in millimeters. None of them are going to get close to this size here. So I'm thinking of ways I might be able to adapt it down. So I've got this PVC thread. This is a threaded reduction bushing in PVC, and it actually makes a couple of turns. It starts to thread and then stops because it's probably well, I know it's tapered pipe thread, but it might be holding enough so that I might be able to actually use that. The other nice thing about it is because it's PVC, I know I don't have to worry about damaging the threads on the block. But since I don't have all the stuff I need to do this today, and I can't go buy it today, I'm going to put this back together so that I don't lose any of the parts. So first part that goes back in is this little cap or retainer. And it just slides right in like that. And then on top of that goes this cap, which goes in just like this. And then the big plug. And then I'm just going to snug it up. Guess I'll pull my alternator off.